Hi everyone, good to see you on my channel today. Today I will tell you a wonderful story. It is full of love and kindness. I hope you enjoy it and I wish you an enjoyable viewing experience. Thank you.
Selena was coming back from the clinic. She walked, immersed in her unhappy thoughts, tired with only one desire to get to her apartment, take off her shoes and lie down. She was very tired lately. Her health was failing her. The electronic tonometer showed all new records. The pressure of the elderly woman rose to 180 and even to 200 in the upper limit. More and more often it was necessary to call an ambulance. Selena's life had never been easy. Since her youth, she had to achieve everything on her own, to work hard. No one brought anything on a silver platter. But the woman did not think that she was offended by God, never grumbled, never complained. She learned to be a seamstress, went to work at the factory, gradually began to earn good money, and besides, she took orders at home. She sewed clothes for the wives of various bosses. Women, happy with the new clothes, gladly recommended the seamstress to their friends, so customers at the seamstress became more and more. Clients, of course, they were capricious, though still fifths, but paid well, and in the period of total deficit, Selena even more happy not money, and a piece of beef or a loaf of cooked sausage. Her customers easily obtained not only luxurious imported fabrics for their outfits, but also scarce products. Being a fifth-rate seamstress, she coped with even the most complex operations, and for the wives of bosses sewed such things, which they could not find even in foreign trips. Selena raised her son alone. It was hard, but she coped. She was worried only because her parents left the world early, leaving her daughter alone in the world. And even in the hardest times, she always knew how to cheer herself up. She didn't whine or complain. Holidays celebrated with friends and neighbors who knew Selena from childhood, since after birth. Parents brought a newborn girl in this house and never changed the place of residence. In the entrance, where Selena lived, everyone knew each other, always greeted each other, and sometimes came for tea with neighbors or rang the doorbell with the words, "Can you borrow salt? I forgot to buy, and the grocery store is already closed." So today, approaching her house, Selena bowed to the grandmothers of the neighbors on the bench. She sat down on the free edge of the bench to take a break. Climbing up to the fourth floor of the panel, she was getting heavier and heavier. "Well, what did the doctors at your clinic tell you this time?" asked neighbor Veronica, who lives on the first floor. "Will you live a long time, or is it time to make sour soup?" Selena did not appreciate the black humor of the old woman, and she had long been calm about the fact that soon they would all go to the grave, and the younger generation would take the benches. Young people replace old people. That's life, and you can't get away from it. "My heart is failing," Selena replied. "And who doesn't have it at the end of life?" said another neighbor, Madi. "I drink pills by the handful every day. But what's the use?" "They say you should go to the hospital to get better," Selena said. She didn't think that in her years she came to that line, which is called the end of life. She wanted to still live. It's just a pity she'll never be able to see her grandchildren again. The only son rests in the cemetery. He and his wife had no children during their short marriage. "Well, why do you hesitate? Pack a bag of things and go, lie down on a hospital bed. Maybe they'll cure you." The neighbors nodded their heads in agreement with Veronica. "I can't, Lucy, my late Harvey's wife, she's a freak. I don't know how else to talk to her. She's about to drive me out of my mind. She's demanding money for her share of my apartment, threatening me with all sorts of trouble." "Oh, give her the money. At least you'll live in peace," advised Mady. Selena, although she lived all her life honestly, worked hard, not chick, and did not go every year on vacation, large savings and did not accumulate. Her pension was a penny, and all because the country was in a mess. No one thought about old age. Everyone looked to a bright future. When it was time to collect documents and carry them to the pension fund, Selena went to the archive to get a certificate of wages she received at the garment factory. By the way, that factory was long gone. The production collapsed not without the help of new and corrupt officials. "We don't have any documents on you," answered the woman in the archive. "What do you mean?" Selena was surprised. "I worked, received a salary. The accounting department transferred money to the pension fund, so you must have information." "What information is there?" shook her head at the archivist. "When your factory was liquidated, all the papers from the accounting department were brought by tractor to the doors of the archive. A whole trailer of documents. Nobody needed them in the troubled times. Don't you remember what a mess the country was in? So your documents were flying all over the street, blown by the wind. They're gone, lost. And what should I do now? Puzzled, upset Selena. Go to the pension fund. They will issue a minimum pension, advised the archives employee. The woman was very upset. Her salary by Soviet standards was very good, $300 and $400 a month. She was counting on a good pension that would provide her with a secure old age. As a result, when she received her first old age allowance, Selena almost cried. This is who in the Duma believes that on such a pittance can live. Here we are not talking about clothes, enough for food and medicine. She complained to her son. Harvey was already an adult, graduated from technical school, and worked at the factory, gradually rose to the master. So what? I will not feed my own mother, do not buy her clothes. Tried to calm Selena. Man, you got something to worry about. You raised me all my life, raised alone. Now it's my time to take care of my mother. Don't worry, sweetheart. Harvey hugged her mother, kissed her wrinkled cheek, and she felt better. Despite the lack of male influence, her son had grown into a real man. Celine had had a hard time with the boy growing up. The woman gave birth to a child, as they say, for themselves, in the 4th decade. A casual relationship with a man gave her a son. She never thought of his biological father as a candidate for a possible. With difficulty and pauses on each flight of stairs, she went up to her floor. Opening the door to the apartment, Selena noticed some boxes tied with twine in the hallway next to the door to Harvey and Lucy's room. Lucy's been visiting, the woman thought. Apparently, she had decided to move the rest of the stuff out of her and Harvey's former room. Or maybe she was going to live with her mother-in-law again and make her life unbearable, bringing her closer to the grave every day. God forbid. Lucy was the kind of girl they say would go far, but she was not liked by many people. And Selena herself had only an overwhelming sense of squeamishness. And how could her son love her like that? When Harvey presented his bride to his mother, the woman tried not to judge harshly, because every person has his faults. Everyone has the right to small weaknesses. But all the negative that can be in a woman, it seemed to gather just in her daughter-in-law. Lucy was not a beauty. She strove to make her image spectacular with makeup and fancy clothes. Every day her crown on her head became bigger and bigger, and she was not going to take it off. She acted like a queen, no less. At first, Selena thought that domesticity came with age. The daughter-in-law would get used to her and Harvey's way of life and would fit in, help her mother-in-law around the house. No way. Lucy worked in a hairdressing salon. When she came home, she did not even try to cook dinner and screamed right from the doorstep. Mommy, what are we having to eat tonight? Selena was sickened by the ugly word mamasha and her sister-in-law's voice. Selena was still working then too, tired, in the evenings waiting for clients who needed to make a new coat or a dress for her daughter for the prom. Rattling the lids of empty pots in the kitchen, Lucy began to resent. You didn't even bother to cook. What are Harvey and I going to eat? What you boiled that you will be, calmly answered mother-in-law, not taking his eyes off the sewing machine. You were walking past the stores from work, you could have bought some food, or at least some convenience foods, if you don't want to cook yourself. Frozen cutlets to fry in a frying pan is not a great mind. Her sister-in-law snorted resentfully and retreated to her in Harvey's room. And Selena, realizing that the girl would not even think of following her advice, went to the kitchen. Lucy liked to sleep in on weekends, and Selena always cleaned the house on Sunday morning. When she heard the noise of the vacuum cleaner, her daughter-in-law, disheveled, in a nightgown and bare feet, would jump out of the room and yell at her mother-in-law, trying to outshout the noise of the vacuum cleaner. Are you crazy? Let me sleep on my only day off. And the dirt that has accumulated over the week will clean itself. Calmly answered Selena, not even thinking to stop vacuuming the carpet. Lucy was a very unhealthy person, and she liked to live in a state of conflict. The girl's toxicity manifested itself in everything. She did not want to consider the interests of her husband's mother. She could turn up the music loudly when Selena had clients. Poisonousness manifested itself in relation to the way of life in Selena's family. No matter what her mother-in-law did, everything elicited rude comments from her daughter-in-law. Lucy was also constantly trying to put her mother-in-law in her place. You should cook the soup and keep quiet, she said when her husband wasn't home. Your place in the kitchen and we are still young. We do not have time to cook. Selena had no trouble making lunch and dinner. She had done it all her life, but in all normal families, daughters-in-law helped their husband's mother, and Lucy didn't even think about it. The girl never bought groceries, did not contribute to the family budget, believing that her life should be provided by her husband and mother-in-law. When Selena realized that it could not go on like this, a serious conversation with her son took place. "Son, maybe you should get a separate apartment," she asked him one evening. "We can't get along with your Lucy. She won't listen to me. I can see you two fighting, Mom. It's no good. There's no winners in a war like this. Everyone loses." Selena's son was the smart and sensible guy. After persistent persuasion, he insisted that he and Lucy live separately. But Selena's daughter-in-law had her own way of doing things. "And for the rented apartment your mother will pay us," she hissed at her husband, squinting her eyes. "Why, Mother?" Harvey answered. "We'll manage on our own. I'm not going to give the money to strangers, and we'll have to scrape by while she's living in a 2-room apartment. If your mother won't help us, we'll go to my parents' house." Lucy's father and mother lived across town. When the children went there, her daughter complained to her mother. "Colin's mother is unbearable. She has no conscience at all. She wants her only son and his wife to rent an apartment, and they themselves lived in poverty, because from the salary will not remain nothing. She deliberately kept silent about her earnings, adhering to the principle, 'His money is our common money, and mine is mine only.' Her mother and father shook their heads, resented her, and called Harvey's mother unscrupulous. As a result, Harvey and Lucy came to live with them, settled in Lubin's room. Son-in-law every month gave 1/3 of his salary to his mother-in-law for food and miscellaneous needs. And the mother-in-law never missed an opportunity to throw a stone in her brother-in-law's garden. "We have a wonderful son-in-law," she said, counting the bills and putting them in a tin can. "I can't understand how such a caring son could be kicked out of the house with a young wife." "Mom didn't kick us out," Harvey tried to justify the move to his, "but people don't change. A good person will not be spoiled by any life circumstances, no difficulties. In any situation he will retain his dignity, nobility, and ability to forgive. But if a person lives with a worm in his soul, with rottenness, as old people would say, this worm will sooner or later get out from under the mask of goodness." Selena had retired. She had a lot of free time now. From time to earn an extra dime, she took work at home, but it was not burdensome for a woman. She tended the house, spent a lot of time in the kitchen, trying to feed the young ones better, and spent her free time with her neighbors in the yard on the bench. Here it is a quiet old age, thought the pensioner. Only the absence of children of her son and his wife Lucy burdened her. Once she tried to talk about it with her daughter-in-law, but she only waved her hands at her mother-in-law. "What are you? What children?" Lucy stood at the mirror, adjusting her dress. The girl was waiting for her husband from work to go to the movies with him. "We have neither a place of our own nor money to raise bloodsuckers. If God gives a child, we'll give in on the child," replied mother-in-law, proven, as it seemed to her, folk wisdom. "Come on, stop talking nonsense," snapped daughter-in-law. "Now it is not fashionable to have children." "What is fashionable?" Selena asked. "Well, to live for yourself, to have fun, to take care that others envy, to build their own housing." "And why don't you build?" My mother-in-law kept up. The girl turned to face her. A block of ice appeared in her gaze. "Why? You'll die soon, so Harvey and I will have enough for your apartment." With a waggle, Lucy went into her room, and Selena stood there stunned. So this is what her daughter-in-law has planned. She can't wait for her old mother-in-law to play in the box. And as only the son does not notice what a snake warmed on his chest, together Harvey and Lucy lived a little more than 3 years. In the factory shop where Harvey worked, there was a strong fire, exploded fuel and lubricants. Workers rushed to extinguish, open red fire shields, pull out buckets, bugs, shovels, open boxes of sand. It was necessary to try to prevent the flames from spreading before the arrival of the fire brigade, to cut off the fire from the exit to other production areas. Self-sacrificing workers fiercely fought the flames. When the firefighters arrived, coping with the fire became easier. The employees of the Ministry of Emergency Situations shouted to the workers to leave the shop, go outside. One by one, through the smoke-filled room, the men got to the exit. Only Harvey didn't make it. He suffocated in the fire, inhaling the acrid smoke from the burning lubricants. The flames were almost extinguished when one of the firemen carried out the breathless body of the shop foreman. The news of her son's death was brought to Selena's home by Lucy. She, as a wife, received a phone call from the factory, told her what had happened, wished her to hold on and added, "Your husband died like a hero." The management gave Lucy financial aid to organize a decent funeral, but the woman decided that now she would have to live without a breadwinner, so let her mother spend money on the funeral. And the material aid from the enterprise of her husband's death, she will find something to spend on. Black with grief, Selena, neither at the cemetery nor at the wake, did not utter a word. She only occasionally nodded appreciatively at the condolences offered, but Lucy tipped a shot of vodka one after another. Who is trying to escape from grief? Thought the woman, looking at her sister-in-law getting drunker and drunker with each shot. When the guests left, Lucy was completely drunk. Clinging to the walls, she made her way to her bed. Celine even felt sorry for the girl, so young and already a widow. But the woman felt even more sorry that her son hadn't left behind a child. It would have been a comfort to her in her old age. And now Selena will never have grandchildren. All that's left of her son is this drunken young woman sprawled on the bed. Harvey loved his wife, so Selena should keep a good relationship with the widow of the deceased son in memory of his son. 6 months later, the mother of the deceased Harvey and his widow Lucy entered into the inheritance. To Selena's surprise, the daughter-in-law was the first to run to the notary's office to claim her rights. The woman was amazed at her foresight, for not much time had passed since the day of Harvey's funeral. She had been married for a week and did not think to give up her claims to her husband's inheritance. For 6 months, Lucy had been visiting her mother-in-law. She almost immediately moved out of her late husband's mother, not wanting to be near an elderly woman. Lucy herself told her mother-in-law, "It is excruciatingly painful for me to live in these walls, where everything reminds me of Harvey." True, she, without embarrassment, took out their matrimonial bed, closet, took some of the dishes. Only Harvey's stuff was left in the room. As they loaded the furniture into the Gazelle, the neighbors were gossiping. "I remember Selena bought this bed 15 years ago," Veronica said, shaking her head. "And my husband helped her carry the closet up to the 4th floor when Harvey was still in high school," Maddie echoed her. 6 months after Selena's son died, the notary issued the women inheritance certificates. Because Lucy was the legal wife of Selena's son, she was entitled to 1/8 of the total living space, just over 7 square meters. This was even less than the kitchen area in her mother-in-law's apartment. But the young widow was not deterred. "We live with Harvey in this room, so 7 square meters of the room is entitled to me by law." The same day she put a lock on the door, locked it, and did not appear in front of Selena for several months. The woman learned from a mutual acquaintance that her sister-in-law was getting married again. Well, that's life. It is not a young woman in loneliness and mourning age to live, without a shadow of offense, thought mother-in-law. But one day Lucy showed up at Selena's apartment, opening the front door with her own key. She did not return it to her mother-in-law, believing that in Lucy's moment can legally come into the house. And Selena did not insist. She did not think about it at all, trying to learn to live without her son all alone. Harvey's death had taken a heavy toll on the woman's already failing health. She looked about 10 years older, shriveled, hunched over, as if she had shrunk into a lump. Without taking off her high-heeled shoes, she walked into the kitchen, where Selena was drinking tea. "Hello," the young woman said loudly and plopped down on a stool. "Hello, Lucy," said the mother-in-law. "Having tea?" "Yes, join us." The woman pulled a mug from the cupboard. To her surprise, Lucy didn't refuse to have tea with her. For a moment, Celine was even glad. Loneliness was weighing her down, and at least she'd get to spend some time with the woman her dead son had loved. Her mother-in-law poured tea and moved the cup and saucer to her daughter-in-law. "There is nothing to buy," embarrassed by the fact that there is nothing but a sugar bowl on the table, said the old woman. "I still can't pay off the debts I took for the funeral." Lucy sipped from her cup, stirred her tea with a spoon to cool it down faster. "So that's what I'm here to see you about," she said, not raising her eyes from the hot drink. "I don't understand what you mean, Lucy," asked her mother-in-law. She had thought that her widow wanted to give her money so that she could pay off her neighbor's debts. But what she heard next came as a real shock to the old woman. "I have 1/8 share in this apartment, right?" Lucy looked at her mother-in-law with an insolent stare. "As far as I remember, that's what the notary said," Selena answered, trying to catch the logical thread of the conversation. "I don't care what you remember or don't remember. Here's the paper. It's all clearly spelled out." The woman took the certificate of inheritance out of her purse and waved it in front of her mother-in-law's nose. She recoiled, startled by Lucy's unexpected gesture. Selena didn't understand what the woman with the bright makeup on her face and fancy hair was getting at. For a moment, she even thought she wanted to give up her rights, but she didn't. Lucy sipped her tea again and continued. "I'd have the right to sell my share and get money for it." "How can you sell it?" The old lady didn't understand. "How can you sell the 7 square meters that are in the apartment?" "Very simply, since I own them, I can do whatever I want with them." Lucy threw her leg over her foot, shook her high stiletto shoe. "But, as I've been told by knowledgeable people, I have to offer to buy my share to you first. That's what the law says. You own most of the square meters, live here and registered, so you can be the first applicant for my meters." Selena's mind was a mess. This insolent girl talked about the coal in the apartment as if it were her property. Maybe, by law, she is the owner of her share, received as an inheritance from her late husband. But in conscience Lucy did not know how to live. There was no such word in her vocabulary. "I'm getting married," the woman began. "I'm marrying a good man." "Congratulations," without a shadow of joy for the former daughter-in-law, just out of politeness, almost on automatics, said the mother-in-law. "I have no doubt that you have chosen a worthy husband, as was my son." "Do not even compare. My new husband is much better and certainly does not impose on me to sit with his mother and take care of her. He does not make me do anything at all. I'm like cheese and butter ride, hampered by his attention and care." These words made Selena's heart ache. What a shameless girl. Not only that she had barely had time to bury Harvey, but she had already found a new husband, so she dared to throw dirt on her dead son. So the insolent guest continued, "I need money. So I suggest you buy out my share and give me the money I am legally entitled to." Selena was silent. Dumbfounded by her former daughter-in-law's proposal, she didn't know what to say. Moreover, the old woman had no idea how much money she could talk about, and she still had debts from the funeral. Lucy knew very well that the pension of her late husband's mother was small, barely enough for food and medicine, and to pay the utility bills on time. "Lucy, I have no money," said the former mother-in-law to the woman. "You know very well what my situation is. There is no one to help me." "It's not my problem anymore," cut off the insolent Lucy. "Solve it yourself. Borrow, take a loan, but give me the money." Lucy named the amount for which, in her opinion, her mother-in-law should buy out her share in the apartment. Selena's eyes widened and her tongue stuck to her mouth. Shocked by the value of 7 square meters belonging to Lucy's inheritance, she lost the power of speech. "I'll give you 2 weeks. Lucy got up from the stool, fixed her mini skirt. "If in 2 weeks the money is not there, and you do not buy out my share, I will act differently. If you don't want to do it the right way, I'll do it the wrong way. You know me? I don't just give up what's mine for nothing." Lucy clicked her heels on the floor and slammed the front door loudly. There was an oppressive silence in the apartment. Selena looked out the window. She saw the woman walk out of the entryway, walk to the beautiful car waiting for her, and sit in the front passenger seat. Everything that had happened seemed unreal to Selena, like an obsession, a dream, anything but the truth. The old woman struggled to get up, took a pill from the shelf, and put it under her tongue. She could feel her blood pressure rising, her temples throbbing, and her heart whimpering with pain. If Harvey were alive, this would never have happened to her. Where to get money, Selena didn't know. In the evening, she went out for some fresh air in the yard. The neighbors were sitting on a bench. Selena joined them. "We saw that Lucy visited you today," Veronica said. "Good girl, does not forget her former mother-in-law," praised Maddie Lucy. "Ah, if only," Selena said quietly. "She didn't come to help me. She didn't come to ask about my health. This topsy-turvy woman demands money from me for her square meters in my apartment." The old woman told her neighbor friends about the conversation with Lucy. The women shook their heads indignantly, lamented, sympathized. "She said that if I didn't find the money, she would do something bad to me," Selena finished her story. "I'm scared, and what if she kills me, poison me in my own apartment?" There are so many stories about such incidents on TV. Only here, no matter how it goes, in any case, I still have no money. And I can't borrow it, even if kind people give me the necessary amount. And if I die tomorrow, who will pay them back my debt? "That's a lot of trouble," Maddie said. "Here," swore Veronica, "where only normal men find such unscrupulous women." And then she added, "You know what, Selena, and you send her away if she comes again, and we'll help her to make a fuss." She threateningly shook in the airstick cane on which she leaned when walking. Lucy showed up 2 weeks later. She kept her word to Selena, but she didn't show up at her ex-mother-in-law's apartment alone. Behind her back stood a big man with a face that clearly had no traces of intelligence, but had all the signs of belonging to some Caucasian diaspora. "Well, old one, are you going to buy out a share of my beauty?" The man's voice rumbled like thunder under the ceiling, giving the ear a strong accent. "And what share do you like better?" Selena tried to answer as rudely. "How about a bathroom with a toilet, or this part of the kitchen?" "Exactly half of it goes out." The old woman nodded at the passage into the kitchen. "You shut your mouth. You better show me the money for Lucy's share." The man rumbled again in a thunderous bass. "There is no money, and I will not buy anything, and you better get out of here before I call the police." Selena surprised herself, where she got so much courage, she even raised her voice strongly. "Insolent couple. This is my apartment. I earned it with my own labor, not like you freeloaders. You're always trying to take something from someone to take away. Get out," I said. Suddenly, the Caucasian grabbed the old woman by the throat. "Listen to you, grandmother," he hissed through white teeth, breathing on the frightened Selena's strong odor of alcohol. "If in a week you do not buy out Lucy's share, we will sell it to other people." Yes, Lucy interrupted. "We'll sell it to anyone, even to large families, even to the poor, and your life here will become such a hell that you'll be running after me and asking me to take money from you." Selena was scared out of her wits. When the uninvited guests left her apartment, she collapsed on the sofa and lay like that until the evening. Her imagination painted horrible pictures. Strangers, dirty children running around the apartment, drunken men sitting in the kitchen, and in the bathroom with basins and piles of laundry fiddling with a strange woman. That night she could not sleep. The days flew by. Selena lived in constant fear that the former daughter-in-law and the ambulance would come to her apartment again. She even considered changing the lock on the front door, but would that save her from such insolent, unscrupulous people? On Friday morning, she went to the polyclinic. She had an appointment for an examination, which she had to undergo. Returning to her apartment in the evening, Selena found boxes at the door of the room Lucy claimed. The old woman was curious as to what else the impudent woman had collected and was about to take out of her house, but she was so tired that she did not open the boxes. She ate dinner and went to bed, making her bed on the couch in the hall. The room formerly occupied by her son and unprincipled daughter-in-law was still locked with a key, and the old lady didn't have a duplicate. Selena slept surprisingly well that night. She opened her eyes where the bright sun was already illuminating the entire room. Suddenly, she heard the whistle of the kettle boiling. The sound came from the kitchen, but the old woman was sure she couldn't have left the kettle on the stove last night. Selena got out of bed, threw her robe on over her nightgown, and walked quietly towards the kitchen. What she saw caused the old woman to look puzzled. In the kitchen, with his back to her, stood a gray-haired man. The old woman saw that he was slicing a loaf and a sausage. "Who are you?" Selena asked in a frightened, quiet voice. "What are you doing here?" The older woman reached for the dining table where the knife lay. She was ready to defend herself if this strange man attacked her. But there was no strength to scream. Her voice was instantly lost from fear. The man turned around at her voice. "Hello, don't be frightened." He noticed the woman's hand reaching for the knife. "I'll explain everything in a moment." Selena, with the sharp knife in her hand, pressed herself against the wall. She looked at the gray-haired stranger, who had inexplicably found himself in her apartment and was tending to her kitchen. Seeing that the old woman was badly frightened, the man took a couple of steps toward the window, stepping farther away, and raised his hands warningly. The elderly woman eyed him. It didn't look like a thief had gotten into her apartment. She had nothing to steal. All her money was in her purse, and she would not have enough to retire on. Besides, a thief who suddenly decided to have tea and sandwiches and took a sausage with him, it looked absurd. The man decided to speak first. "You see, I bought a share in your apartment," he said. "I can show you the contract of sale. If you let me, I'll go and get it from the room the seller gave me. Just put the knife down, please. I won't hurt you, though I may cause you some inconvenience." The man's eyes were neither evil nor cunning. There was no sense of danger emanating from him, but Selena still did not let the knife out of her hands. She slowly sat down on the stool. The unfamiliar man walked slowly past her, then returned a moment later and handed the older woman a paper. Selena took it in her hands, began to read it. Gradually, the meaning of what was happening began to come to her. It turned out that Lucy had kept her promise and sold her 7 squares to a stranger. True, she really needed the money, so she did not look for large families who bought housing through Eternity Capital. With such buyers, there is a lot of fuss, and the money will have to wait for more than 1 week. Therefore, to move in with her hated former mother-in-law, she chose, as it seemed to her, the worst of the evils of the old man. The buyer was very late for the deal. Lucy was nervous and even grumbled at him when he showed up at the door. The man was dressed in filthy clothes that smelled of some kind of sludge. Not even going to discuss the aspects of the deal with him, she said. "You sued us, we agreed to sell you our share in a 2-room apartment." Only the man suddenly began to ask where the apartment, who lives there, and who will live there except him. What kind of bathroom is combined or separate? Lucy did not like all this. She was obviously nervous and even offered to discount the price. She almost persuaded the buyer, almost covering her nose so as not to hear the foul odor from his dirty jacket. "In fact, you'll only own 7 meters, but you'll be able to take a whole room. It's a very good deal. You'll also have use of the kitchen, bathroom, and toilet. There's a harmless old lady who lives in this apartment, a dandelion. Growl at her once or twice, she won't leave her room without your permission. Let's draw up the contract." Lucy hurried the buyer. She was eager to get it over with and get the money. And Lucy was also glad that the buyer was a man who looked like a bum. This one is sure to make the old woman's life a living hell. Probably also likes to touch the bottle, thought Selena's former daughter-in-law. She liked to indulge herself in the thought that the former mother-in-law will suffer for not wanting to give her money for a share in the apartment. They made a contract and quickly parted ways. And where is the bum? Not understanding anything, Selena quietly asked the man so unexpectedly found in her kitchen. And he laughed merrily, seeing that the older woman put down the knife. "So I'm the bum, it turns out," the stranger said. "You see, when I went to the city to buy the share, our neighborhood had already been raining for several days. Passing through one of the villages, the pasik I was driving sank into the mud. All the men had to get out and push to continue on their way. There we all got dirty in a huge puddle, into which not only mud from the roadside, but also slurry from the farm had poured. Looking at me, the woman who was selling the share apparently took me for a homeless person who wanted to buy a warm corner in someone else's apartment with the money that appeared from nowhere." The situation really seemed comical to Selena. The man did not look like a man from the street at all. He had a kind face, his head was completely covered with a noble gray hair, and the alignment would be envied by any young guy. He didn't slouch, didn't hunch over, stood with his back straight, and looked at Selena. She looked over his clothes. The short-sleeved reading shirt and light cotton pants were ironed. "So you're a bum then?" Selena dared, already ready to dialogue with the man. "And let me ask you, can I call you something less offensive?" The man laughed again. He had completely forgotten to introduce himself. Holding out his hand to Selene, he said, "Archie, retired lieutenant colonel," and jokingly added, "the new legal owner of 7 square meters in your cozy and welcoming home." The woman extended her hand to him in return. Listening to Archie's story, she had already put aside the instrument of defense, completely calmed down, feeling safe. At least this man wasn't going to rob or kill her. Archie set the sausage sandwiches on a plate. "I was going to have breakfast," he said. "Let's get it together." Selena took cups out of the cupboard and made tea. She hadn't had a guest in a very long time, unless you counted Lucy's visit, but this guest the woman clearly liked. Suddenly she made a surprising discovery for herself and asked the man, "So you slept in my apartment tonight?" "Well, yes, I'm sorry," Archie replied guiltily. "I was so exhausted last night that I took a shower and went straight to bed." "Are the boxes by the door to my dead son's room yours?" the old woman asked. "That's right, I couldn't take them apart yesterday." "And you slept so soundly that you didn't hear me come home and have dinner in the kitchen?" "I didn't hear anything at all," Archie shrugged. They laughed merrily. The situation was like a plot for a comedy. A man and a woman had been in the same apartment all night, but neither realized they were alone. The woman who was selling me the share had no time to say anything about who I would live with in the same apartment. Archie told me about the deal. All she said was that it would be an old lady. I'm not a stupid man, you know. They don't keep stupid in the army. But shrewdness and the ability to notice everything is one of my positive traits. I realized at once that there was something unclean and incomprehensible in this story. The woman was in a hurry. She was even happy that I came to the deal all dirty. Then I decided that it was necessary to see why she wanted to get rid of her share so hastily. even though I wasn't planning on living here. And this is Lucy, my ex-sister-in-law, my dead son's wife, Selena answered. She hated me from day one, though I still don't understand why. And when my son died, she went completely off the rails, rude, insulted openly. From resentment, loneliness, from the fact that there is no one close to her, Selena suddenly had tears in her eyes. She felt the strongest need to speak out, to complain, to get her share of sympathy. It was obvious that she was a woman without brakes. Archie tried to support her as best he could. It's best to stay away from such women. My son loved her blindly and believed her, thought it was me who disliked his wife, that I was at war with her. But in fact, it was she who started the war from day one, Selena continued. But now you can be calm, said the gray-haired man. After the sale of his square meters, your former daughter-in-law will definitely not appear here. I hope never to see her anywhere at all, Selena said. They spent the whole day together. They moved to the hall, where they talked a lot under the quiet muttering of the TV. It turned out that Archie needed a share in Selena's apartment to get a residence permit in this city. As a young man, he had graduated from a military school, gotten married, and left for a distant garrison on the border with China. The young family lived without frills, but he tried to provide for his wife, pampered as he could. Archie's wife graduated from university by correspondence and got a job at the local school as an elementary school teacher. At first, they lived in a dormitory, and when his wife became pregnant, the family was given a small apartment. He and his wife had a son named John. When the boy was 12 years old, Archie's wife became seriously ill, burned just a few months, and died in the hospital. Raising a son alone was hard. Archie was often absent. The boy was left to himself, so his father decided to send him to study in the Cadet Corps. There, in discipline, will teach and give knowledge. Only in the footsteps of his father's military guide did not go. He has always been attracted by cars and other machinery. He settled in this small town, married a local girl, and had a family. The guy earned as much as he could. At first, he worked in a car service center and then opened his own business. Now Archie has 2 grandchildren, Katie and Evan, and his son has a chain of car service centers. John's wife helps his son with everything. The man praised his daughter-in-law. On it all the accounting of their common business, all the accounts herself heaves, does not want to hire people from the outside because they can and let down and set up. Archie himself, having retired, decided to get a small cottage, to live in silence, to do auxiliary farming. He bought a small house 200 kilometers from the city, where his son lives with his family, started an apiary, raised chickens, geese, and rabbits. Archie suddenly jumped up from the chair in which he was so comfortably settled and enjoying the conversation with Selena. "I'm an old fool," he exclaimed. "I got bags full of goodies." The man hurried down the hallway, and Selena followed him. From boxes and bags, he began to pull out jars of honey, rabbit stew, and homemade chicken eggs carefully packed in mesh containers, and strawberry and currant jam, pickled cucumbers and tomatoes, sauerkraut. It seemed Archie's pantry would never be empty. "This is all for you." Archie looked contentedly at the kitchen table filled with jars. "Please help yourselves. Everything, as they say, is organic, grown by these hands." The man showed Selena his strong, strained palms, and she laughed and suggested, "So let's put the kettle on again, with your jam, drink tea in the kitchen, and continue the conversation." The woman went to the stove, and the man began to arrange the jars in the refrigerator and on the shelves in the closet. When the man and the woman sat down at the table, Selena asked, "Who did you leave your household for?" "It's a joke. I'm not a villager and I don't know anything about it, but I can imagine how much trouble it is. I have a friend who is a local farmer." Archie answered Selena's question. "He asked me to look after him for now, and then we'll see. If I have to stay in town with my children and grandchildren, I'll have to sell the apiary, geese, chickens, all the rabbits. But I will never sell the house. There is such beauty that takes my breath away. The forest is nearby, a small lake with clear water. The air is clean." Selena had already imagined this beautiful place that Archie had told her so enthusiastically about. "I wasn't planning on living here in the city, Selena. It's just that my son asked for help. My grandson will go to school in the fall, and my granddaughter will graduate from kindergarten next year and become a first grader. They're the same age. We need to keep an eye on the kids. My son and daughter-in-law rent an apartment. All the money they invest in business. They have not yet saved for their own home. You can't make a residence registration in a rented apartment, and I, a man who is not old anymore, as you understand, need to visit the clinic. Who will take me there without a propiska? So I decided to buy a share in the apartment, not to live, but to register. Archie's words were a surprising revelation to Selena. She had thought he was going to live here, but he was going to live with his son. She was suddenly both relieved and a little sad at the same time. Being with a man who had suddenly appeared in her life, Selena liked it very much. Well, that you there will be in a 2-room apartment on each other's heads to sit, live here and go to his son as needed, she suggested. And the man looked thoughtfully at the old woman sitting opposite him and happily eating strawberry jam. Despite her age, she was still very beautiful. Even the traces of grief and fear did not spoil the appearance of her new acquaintance. They talked for a long time, and in the evening Archie went home to his son. Saying goodbye to Selena, he asked, "Can I come and see you tomorrow?" The woman thought it was a ridiculous question. He now owned a part of her apartment and would soon move in. "Of course, yes," she answered, and felt joy in her soul. "Why do you ask? You have your own key. Come anytime, since we are now tenants of the same communal apartment." Laughing at the vicissitudes of fate, they parted. For the first time in many months, Selena slept a peaceful sleep. In the morning, the old woman got ready to go to the market. She hoped Archie would show up at their shared apartment, and she wanted to thank him. And just like that, she threatened to sell her share in the apartment and sold it. "I sold it to this man. I thought I'd be dead, but he turned out to be a good man. Come to my place tonight. I'll feed you tea and homemade jam." My tenant picked the berries himself and made the jam himself. The neighbor shook her head in amazement. How could such a thing happen? Selena hurried to the market. She carefully chose fresh cabbage, feeling the dense cabbage with her finger, bought carrots, beets, and potatoes. The bag was heavy, but the elderly woman did not want to give up cooking borscht, so immediately at the market she bought a cart on wheels with a high metal handle. "A very handy thing," the seller told her. "She will always take it to the stores in the market. No matter how much you load into it, and you won't feel the weight. Roll along the road and don't know any grief." Selena thanked the saleswoman, gave her the last of her money, and walked towards home. "I'll live to retire," she thought. She was eager to show Archie what a good hostess and cook she was. To her surprise, when she got to the floor, the older woman found that Archie was home. There was water gurgling in the bathroom. "Is he washing or what?" thought Selena, but the man came out, swinging the door open. He had a gas wrench in his hands and his shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows. "I noticed yesterday when I was taking a shower that there was a leak under the bathtub," he said, explaining why he was standing in front of the landlady with a tool in his hands. "I decided to fix it while I had nothing to do, but it turned out that water was also pouring into the toilet cistern." The man took the woman's bag and took the groceries to the kitchen. "Why are you, Selena, carrying such a heavy load yourself? You could have waited for me," he reproached her. "And now I have such a wonderful cart. It can take away any number of goods." Selena happily boasted of the acquisition. She was pleased to see Archie. And the man rubbed his hand over his arm and said, "You still have a curtain in the hall barely holds. I'll go nail it tight, or no chance it will fall. And on your head, when you open or close the curtains." He looked for something in the toolbox and went into the hall. Without noticing, Selena smiled happily. This man gave her a strange, unfamiliar feeling of warmth, security, calm. She had never experienced anything like it, so now, at the dawn of her years, she wanted to feel every emotion arising in her soul. While Archie fiddled with the curtain in the hall, Selena set about making borscht. She shredded cabbage, peeled potatoes, grated carrots, and beets. The fragrant smell of borscht soon spread throughout the kitchen and traveled through the apartment. Archie responded to it. "Ah, it smells delicious, just divine," he said, entering the kitchen. "I see you're a great hostess, a great cook." "I can do that," the woman replied without false modesty, "but there is no one to cook borscht for." The man decided to cheer her up, or she would plunge into sad memories again. "But now the situation will change," he said cheerfully. "I really like home cooking and borscht and shiels and cutlets and cooking. Therefore, cook you will be for me, and I in return will perform all the male duties at home." "Agreed?" "Very tempting offer," joked Selena. "Of course now I will cook more willingly for myself alone that did not want it all, and now I have a guest at the table every day." Selena liked the way Archie enjoyed her borscht. It was not for nothing that she had carried such a huge bag, not for nothing that she had spent the last of her money on groceries. The next day, the man suggested that Selena go to the store together. He did it unobtrusively, under the pretext of an ordinary walk, noticing that there was almost nothing in the refrigerator. "Let's go for a walk. The weather is great," he persuaded the woman. "Show me what's interesting in your city." Selena agreed, got dressed, tittied up, and even put on some lipstick. She wanted to look especially good on this day because she would be walking down the street next to a stately man. Selena had looked attractive when she was young, but she never took advantage of it. She didn't need admirers and their advances. Fully immersed in the care of her son, the woman almost did not pay attention to herself. And as she grew older, illness made itself felt, then the death of her son. Selena looked like an old woman, not a woman who could attract men. Today, she wanted everyone to see how good she looked despite her advanced years. They strolled between store windows and counters. Archie took whatever he thought was appropriate, wanting to please his new friend. The last one to go into the grocery basket was a big, beautiful cake. "Let's drink tea in the evening. I brought some fragrant herbs. With them, tea is not just a drink, but a cocktail that gives strength and youth." Approaching the entrance, Selena noticed the neighbors on the bench. They looked at the approaching couple with interest, and when Selena and Archie approached them, they bowed. "Hello, Selena. Where did you go? And why don't you introduce us your companion?" asked Veronica. "This is Archie. He came to the city from the village," said the woman, introducing the neighbors to the man. "Now he lives in our entryway, or rather, in my apartment." The neighbors nodded and smiled approvingly, and Archie suggested to them, "You come to us for tea and cake. Sit, as they say at home, talk." "We'd love to," Maddie and Veronica exclaimed almost in unison. When the man and woman disappeared behind the door, the neighbors looked at each other. They noted that Selena had changed a lot in just a few days. There was a sparkle in her eyes, and a smile on her face shone with happiness. She even looked younger. The state of her friend pleased and at the same time amazed the neighbors. That's how a person changes when he no longer feels lonely, when someone appears near him, able to bring variety and warmth to life. In the evening, both neighbors came for tea. The host put the table in the middle of the kitchen so that everyone could fit in without embarrassing each other. In a teapot, Archie brewed a healing tea with oregano, street John's wort, and mint. The aroma wafted throughout the kitchen and traveled beyond. It made Selena feel warm and cozy. A cake was placed on the table, along with honey from Archie's apiary and homemade jam. The neighbors were happy to receive her. Over tea, as usual, each told a little about herself. Having learned that Archie was a former military man, Veronica said, "My Evan, God rest his soul, was also a military man, up to colonel, but he died early. His heart failed." The old woman put her palm to her cheek, shook her head, regretting the death of her beloved husband, and could still live, grandchildren to nurse. The man philosophically remarked, "Whoever has as much time as he has to live, that's how long he walks on the white selenium. It is important not how long a person has lived, but how many good deeds he managed to do to people during this time." And there are some people who do not think about others at all. Maddie joined the conversation. Selena's sister-in-law, for example. What a rattlesnake cobra. She took her soul out of our Selena. All she did was torment her. "Come on, she won't come here again," Selena said. "What's she got to do here now that she sold her share? She's not going to visit me and worry about my health." The woman was glad that there were guests in the house, that there was a man who made her feel happy and excited, and all the troubles had receded into the background, almost completely forgotten. She suddenly felt like singing for years, and Selena belted out an old song. The neighbors picked up on it, and Archie joined in. It was getting dark outside. From the open window of one of the fourth-floor apartments came a long, discordant chant. In the morning, Selena made breakfast. She was in a great mood after last night's sit-down. It had been a long time since she felt this good. She shared with Archie, spreading butter on a bun. It seemed to her that the man sitting across from her with the gray hair and strong arms had known her all her life. It was as if he'd always lived in her apartment. "I liked it too," the man said. "I have to go today. I promised my grandson I'd take him shopping. I want to get him a bicycle for September 1st and some school supplies." Selena suddenly felt that she wanted to keep Archie company, but she didn't dare to ask if it was convenient. She thought she would wait for him tonight with a delicious dinner. When the man left, she took care of the housework. Cleaning had never given her so much pleasure. Climbing up on a stool, she was dusting the cupboard when suddenly the woman's eyes darkened. Selena swayed and fell to the floor. The woman woke up to warm, strong, caring hands lifting her up and placing her on the couch. Archie looked at the woman with worried eyes, adjusting the pillow to make her lie comfortably. "Obi," he muttered in an old man's way, "how could I have left you alone? I knew your blood pressure was skyrocketing and your heart was aching." She noted that Archie addressed her in the first person. She felt warm, but her whole body ached, and it was hard to move. "Selena, how are you? What hurts?" the man asked, seeing that Selena had opened her eyes. He let go of her hand and went to the hallway. "I'll call an ambulance. I should have left you alone." "Hello, an ambulance." Selena was taken to the hospital. The woman had high blood pressure. Archie waited anxiously in the corridor to hear what the doctor had to say. Every now and then he got up from his chair and started pacing back and forth, unable to find his place. Finally, the doctor came out to him. "We'll have to keep your wife with us," the doctor said. Archie noticed that the man had said wife, but he didn't argue that they weren't married. "Selena had a heart attack. She's in no immediate danger, but we need to treat her. Do you have your wife's papers with you?" Archie was confused. He didn't have his papers, and he didn't know where they were. "The doctor asked me to bring my passport and policy. Without documents, we can't register her," he said lastly. Archie watched the doctor walk away down the hall. Back at home, he wondered where Selena's papers might be. The answer came naturally, probably in her purse. And that, indeed, was the case. He moved them into his jacket pocket, deciding that he would go to the clinic in the morning and visit his friend. Archie was not allowed to see the patient. The doctor said she was too weak. We should wait a few days. Any more talk or upheaval could hurt her. "Then you'll just tell her Archie came by," the man asked the doctor. "Aren't you Selena's husband?" the doctor asked. "No," the gray-haired man replied, a little embarrassed. "We just lived in the same apartment a while ago." The doctor did not understand anything, but thought, what strange people these old people are, living together and calling each other by their first names. The house was quiet and empty. Archie sat down on the sofa. He looked around the room. It looked as if it had not been renovated in a long time. The wallpaper was faded, the ceiling was yellow without a fresh coat of whitewash. The doors were warped, and they creaked every time he opened them. After a little thought, the man decided he would surprise Selena. She'd be thrilled when she got home from the hospital. Archie called his son. "Steve, I have a favor to ask of you," he said into the phone when he heard his son's voice. "Could you lend me your car until tonight? I want to buy materials for the renovation of the apartment." But the son made an unexpected counter-proposal. "Dad, I would love to, but you do not know the city or where the stores are located, and you're not old enough to drive a car. Let me drive you, and we'll buy everything together." Archie was glad. He raised his son well. The boy was responsive to any request, always eager to help people. This time he did not stand aside when his father shared his plans. A few hours later, Archie and his son, Steve, brought into Selena's apartment rolls of wallpaper, cans of paint and whitewash, brushes, rollers, other goods bought at the construction supermarket. "This, son, is the apartment I bought a share in," Archie said, gesturing for the boy to come through. "I thought I'd just sign in and then I wouldn't be here at all, but that's how it turned out. I feel at home here. But it's sad and lonely without Selena." Steve already knew enough about his landlady, his father, from the first day of his acquaintance with Selena. He talked about how she cooks delicious borscht and what a wonderful woman he met on his life path. The son was glad. Since the death of his seriously ill mother, Archie did not pay attention to women, all himself devoted to military service and his son. He saw that his father needed support in his old age, tried to call often to find out how he was doing, but was it enough not to feel lonely? Deciding to cheer up his father, he said, "Well, now you'll have no time to be bored. There's a lot to do here. It's obvious that no one has taken care of the apartment." "Who's looking after it, son?" "She lives alone. No helpers," my father said, "and she often gets sick." "You help her, and I'll drop by in the evenings when I can to make it easier for you." Archie was glad that his son had volunteered to help him renovate Selena's apartment. It was indeed a big job. It had to be done by the day the woman was discharged from the hospital. From morning till evening, the man stripped off old wallpaper, whitewashed the ceilings. In the evenings, Steve came over and they cleaned up the place together. Gradually, the apartment began to transform. The fresh renovation seemed to breathe new life into it. Archie blew new tiles in the bathroom, replacing the old ones with beautiful floral tiles. It was bright and even more spacious. He threw out the old front doors and replaced them with new ones with smoked glass. The wallpaper in Selena's room was light-colored. It seemed to him that this room should be full of selenium and warmth. The days flew by. When everything was ready, Archie looked around the transformed space. "Do you think she'll like it?" he asked his son. "Don't worry, she'll love it," Steve said with a smile. "But it's a mess after our work here. I'll ask Natalie to come tomorrow and clean the windows, because the whitewash that got on the glass is almost invisible." In the evening, when father and son returned to Steve's apartment, Natalie was waiting for the men to have dinner. "How are your renovations coming along?" she asked, arranging the pasta and cutlets on plates. "Almost everything is ready for the arrival of the mistress," the husband proudly answered his wife. "But there is a lot of dirt. The windows would be cleaned and the floor too." "Could you help?" "Gladly," replied the young woman. "I just today all the reports on car service centers to the tax office. I can afford one day off work. What do you think, Park Service Director?" He jokingly asked her husband for a day off, knowing he would gladly give a positive answer. And Archie looked at his son and daughter-in-law, glad that they are so friendly and love each other, felt that in his life begins a new stage. "When will your friend be discharged?" Natalie asked. "In 3 days," my father-in-law answered. "I will definitely go to meet her from the hospital." "Let's organize a party for her together," the daughter-in-law suggested. The men looked at each other puzzled. They had not thought about it at all. They had to make Selena happy, to make her feel how much Archie was looking forward to her return. Natalie's idea appealed to everyone. It was decided that on the appointed day, they would have a welcome party for her father's friend. On the day Selena was discharged from the hospital, Archie's first priority was to go to the flower store. He wanted to buy flowers to please his girlfriend. The variety of bouquets made his eyes water. He was not a great expert in floristry. The last time he bought flowers was when he visited his wife's grave. They were white roses, which the late wife loved so much. But today it is a different story. The bouquet should do more than just please Selena. Archie wanted the flowers to tell the woman of his warm feelings for her. He'd been thinking about her a lot these past few days. Selena, who had suddenly appeared in his life, filled the emptiness that had long since become habitual for the man, and brought new, very bright, rich colors into his pensioner's everyday life. "Can I help you with something?" asked the saleswoman, seeing that the buyer looks at the showcase with flowers. "I need a special bouquet for the woman I love," Archie answered, and he was surprised at how easy the word beloved came to him, because he thought he would never love anyone again. He would never be able to fill the void in his heart after the death of his wife. "I think this bouquet will suit you," the girl handed the man a roses in a modest package. They were deep blue, almost the same color as Selena's eyes. Archie paid, thanking the saleswoman. Selena sat on the bed in the hospital room, waiting for her discharge and belongings to be brought to her. When Archie entered the room, she was happy, smiling, the woman's eyes glowing with happiness. "How glad I am that you came." She suddenly wanted to call him you, to feel that they were not just neighbors living in the same apartment, but close friends. "How could I not come?" the man said, holding out a bouquet of blue irises to Selena. Very beautiful and delicate, Selena pressed the bouquet to her chest. The doctor entered the room, followed by a nurse who carried the patient's clothes. The doctor turned to Archie. "Selena's condition is stable now. We'd have treated her well," he said. "But she needs absolute rest to prevent what happened from happening again. Try to keep her calm. Take more walks in the fresh air. Positive emotions and the presence of loved ones heal better than any medication." "Don't worry, doctor," replied the man, shaking hands with the doctor. "I will do everything as you said. I won't leave her alone for a moment longer." He looked fondly at his friend. And she smiled? Suddenly, Selena thought it was the cheeky Lucy who had changed her life so much. Who would be meeting her from the hospital now if her sister-in-law hadn't sold her share of Sveta's apartment to this wonderful man? A cab was waiting for them at the hospital exit. Archie put the woman in the back seat. On the way, Selena asked him what he was doing, what new things had happened. "Soon you'll see for yourself," Archie replied, smiling enigmatically. "You talk so mysteriously that I'm starting to worry," Selena joked, as if I wouldn't have to go back to the hospital again. "Don't worry. What's waiting for you at home will make you happy, not sad. I did my best." The car stopped at the entrance. While Selena's companion was paying the driver, she looked up at the windows on the 4th floor. How much she missed her native walls. Suddenly, the woman saw in the kitchen window the faces of two children, a boy and a girl. They looked out into the yard and waved happily. The woman's heart beat harder. She is not returning to an empty apartment. Someone is there and they are waiting for her. Selena was elated. She was back in her home where she had lived all her life, but she didn't recognize her apartment at all. Surprised, the woman scrutinized the new wallpaper on the walls, stroked it with her hand, feeling the subtle pattern in relief with her fingertips. The immaculate white ceiling seemed to expand the space, and the new interior doors in the shade of natural wood. It was simply incomprehensible how her apartment had been transformed. The woman many times asked her late son and former daughter-in-law to make repairs, but Lucy always said that for such excesses they have no money. And so, they say will do. And once, when the young woman said that they were not going to get their own place, and will wait until Selena died. That's when we'll do a luxury renovation, so that your spirit is not even here, said the wife of the son angrily. The woman pushed the sad memories away from her. Now everything has changed in her life. It remains only to rejoice. All this for Selena made with his own hands. Archie, realizing that he cared for her, made Selena feel warm. Open the door and come into the hall, Archie commanded. Come on, be brave. Just turn the doorknob and come in. He nudged the woman quietly toward the door to her room. She opened it hesitantly, wondering what other surprise awaited behind that beautiful new door with the smoked glass. Congratulations on your return, shouted and clapped loudly Archie's son, daughter-in-law, and two grandchildren. Selena wept at such a warm, welcoming greeting. It had been a long time since anyone had surprised her. She couldn't even remember the last time she had been so happy. Hello, the woman said, looking around at the people present and the transformed room. It had become very cozy, and the presence of the guests filled the space with a sense of celebration. In the center of the room stood a large table with salads, appetizers, and cutlery carefully arranged. Meet Selena, Archie said. This is my family. Here is my son Steve, his wife Natalie, and these are my favorite mischievous grandchildren Katie and Evan. It's a pleasure to meet you all, Selena said with a smile. I don't even know how to thank you for such a warm welcome. I do, Natalie said cheerfully. We'll be happy if you like our treats. You must have missed it at home. We all know the hospital food is bad. Come on, everybody, sit down and have a good meal. Archie sat Selena down at the table, and the guests were seated. The children were making a lot of noise and reaching for the vase of candy, but Natasha gave them a stern look, and they started to eat the cutlets. Dad's told me a lot about you, Selena, Steve said, and now I've met you, and I think I've known you before. Your father told me about you too, but I didn't think we'd meet so soon, the woman replied. Are you going to be our grandmother now? Katie asked, finishing her sausage. Selena was confused. The adults were silent too, no longer talking among themselves. The girl's unexpected question took everyone by surprise. It's just that we have a grandfather, but no grandmother. 6-year-old Barbara tried to explain the reason for her interest. And children should have a grandmother. Thumbelina had a grandmother, and so did the Snow Maiden. Even Kolobot had a grandmother, only he ran away from him and his grandfather. That's what the books say. If you will be our grandmother, I will not run away from you. The girl reasoned about the desire to immediately find a grandmother with such a serious look that all the adults laughed. And the older brother even playfully flicked his sister on the nose. Selena loved these beautiful, kind children. They filled her heart with warmth, the desire to take care of them, to give them joy. She would never have grandchildren herself, but Katie and Evan could be her favorite grandchildren, even if they weren't her own. Don't bother Selena with silly questions, Natalie told her daughter when everyone had stopped laughing. Why not, Natalie? It's my pleasure, Selena stopped her. I would love to be your grandmother. You can call me Grandma Selena. Yay, shouted the girl happily. Jumping off her chair, she started running around the table. The house filled with cheer. Archie turned on the music on the old tape recorder, invited Selena to dance. I'll stomp your feet, she smiled embarrassedly. I can't even remember the last time I danced. Meanwhile, on the stairwell next to Selena's door, the neighbors stomped hesitantly. Do you hear that? Veronica asked Maddie. What's all this partying in Selena's apartment while she's in the hospital? It's probably Archie. She shook her head. He seemed like a decent man. Look how loud they're getting. Let's knock on the door. Go in and see who he's brought into this 7 square meters, taking advantage of Selena's absence. The neighbors knocked on the door. Archie answered the knock. When the neighbors saw the man, they began to reprimand him, interrupting each other. "What are you doing here, Archie, while Selena is in the hospital?" Veronica said hurriedly. "He looks like a decent man, but you're having a party, calling guests," Maddie echoed her. The man gestured for them to come in, opening the door wider. "You might want to join my guests." The old lady snorted, but curiosity got the better of them and they followed the man in. What they saw in the neighbor's apartment amazed them. In the hall, embraced, danced a young couple, and Selena spun round in a round dance with two children, a boy and a girl. "These are my guests," Archie pointed with his hand. "My children and grandchildren, and you have a seat at the table." The neighbors could not refuse such an offer. They couldn't resist, with such pleasant company in front of them. Selena was glowing with happiness. The old ladies had not expected to see her in such good health. When they were all seated again, Archie poured liquor into shot glasses. "Help yourselves," he offered, "and I made it myself from lingonberries. There's a lot of them near my village house." The neighbors tasted the Neluka, nodded gratefully to the man who took care of them. "My dear neighbors," Selena said, "look at the welcome Archie and his family have given me, and I'm also very glad you came to see me. I'm so happy tonight. Let's drink to that." And once again, the glasses were refilled with lingonberry liqueur. "To my big newfound family, my son Steve, my daughter Natalie, and my two wonderful grandchildren," Selena said and turned to Steve and Natasha. "Will you allow me to call you that?" "Of course," answered the young people with a chorus. The guests sat and talked for a long time, laughed a lot, and were happy for the landlady. She had suffered so much in her life that at last she had the right to be happy. Walking the old ladies to the door, Archie said, "Dear neighbors, you don't lose us. Tomorrow I'm taking Selena to my country house. She needs peace, fresh air, and positive emotions. There's no better place to get it all." Veronica and Maddie approved of the man's decision, nodding their heads, wishing him a good journey, and Selena, surprised by such a statement, looked at the man with an affectionate gaze. What a blessing it is to be cared for and decided upon, she thought. The next day they packed their things. At the appointed hour, Steve drove his car up to the driveway and took his father and Selena to the bus station. The drive was long. The woman fell asleep with her head resting on her companion's shoulder. Forests, fields, small villages flew by. Archie was glad to be back in his village cottage. He was glad that he was not going there alone, but with a woman who had become so dear to him, so close. The man clearly realized that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Selena. He already imagined how he would show her his small farm, how he would take her to the apiary and treat her to fresh honey, how he'd show her the rabbit house. She'd love the furry things. It's impossible not to love them. From the bus stop to Archie's house was about 3 kilometers. The only thing the man worried about was whether it would be too tiring for Selena to walk that long. But to his delight, a familiar car turned off the highway. It was a local farmer who had agreed to look after Archie's farm. "Hello, Austin," he greeted, rolling down his window. "You've decided to come back. I'm on my way to see you, so get in and we'll ride together since we've met." On the way they talked about the cattle, the farmer's business, who had bought another plot of land for cutting grass and making hay, and many other things. Selena admired the nature and thought that here lived quite different people, no evil and resentment. Archie's cottage turned out to be a perfectly livable structure. The plot was surrounded by a wooden fence. The man opened the gate and let Selena in. "Come in and make yourself at home," he said. The woman was curious about everything. She was curious about the barns where the rabbits lived in cages, watched the hens and the handsome rooster strutting between them, watched the noisy geese fearfully. And Archie heated the house. The nights were cool in late summer, and it was cold inside. He put the kettle on the stove and laid a linen tablecloth on the veranda table. In the evening, the man and woman drank tea quietly, enjoying the quiet view of the scarlet sun sinking behind the woods. "Selena, if I ask you something, would you be offended?" Archie asked suddenly. "Ask? I'll try not to be offended," the woman joked, sipping her tea with fragrant herbs from a cup. "How come you've never been married?" The question made Selena wonder. She set the cup with the unfinished tea on the table, looked carefully into the man's dark eyes and said quietly, "I've been waiting for you," she added, "always waiting and believing you would come." They embraced and sat on the veranda for a long time, enjoying each other's company, the silence of the night and the trill of crickets. The 2 weeks of Selena's vacation flew by very quickly. She learned to look after the rabbits, fed the geese and chickens, glanced apprehensively at the swarm of bees buzzing over the hives. Together with Archie, they harvested vegetables from the garden beds and sauteed several large jars of cabbage. In winter, boiled potatoes and sauerkraut are the best food in the world. Archie praised the preparations. Celine liked being in the village. There was its own charm in this simple life, and to be near her favorite man was twice as pleasant. At the dawn of her life, the woman thanked God for her happiness. "You know," said Selena, setting the dishes on the table, "I miss our children so much. I wish they would come to our village." "That's unlikely," the man replied. "You know, Steve has a lot of work to do, but you and I can go into town. We'll take Evan to school on September 1 and celebrate. We'll bring back some goodies from the village." Selena happily agreed, and they began to pack. They had to put honey, fresh chicken eggs, and vegetables in their bags. When they heard that the owner of the cottage was going to go to town again, Archie's farmer friend visited him. "Why do you frequent the city, Borisovich?" he asked. "I see that you no longer like life in the village." "That's not the point," the man replied. "Selena missed her grandchildren very much, so we're going to see them. And I think maybe you'll stay in the city for good. I remember you were thinking of selling the house and the lot. You think carefully. I'll give you good money right now," the farmer persistently offered. "It will be enough for a good life. You'll live in the city and not think about anything." "Yes, I and my military pension is enough for now," said the man, not in a hurry to refuse his friend in the sale of the house and plot. He was not sure that he would want to live here alone, without Selena, when she decided to return to the city apartment. But suddenly Selena entered the conversation. She put her arm around Archie and said, smiling, "We won't sell the house, we'll live in the village ourselves." "Good luck to you," said the farmer and left. And Archie looked carefully into the eyes of his favorite woman and asked, "Are you sure?" "Yes, I have decided to stay here with you," she said and kissed him on the lips. A solemn day came for Vanechka. Today he went to the first class for the first time. In the hands of the boy was a large bouquet of autumn dahlias. From behind the lush bouquets, Evan's face was almost invisible, which caused Barbara to laugh. But Evan was not offended by his sister's taunts. He was proud of the fact that on his shoulders hung a brand new backpack, in which were stacked the first school books and notebooks in his life. After the ceremony, the family went home to Selena's house.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.